Greetings, and welcome to Six Path Weeb. Today's discussion delves into a bold and thought-provoking alternate reality within the Naruto universe. What if Naruko were pregnant with Tobirama Senju's child? This what-if scenario explores the intricate interplay of legacy, power, and emotion, blending two formidable characters from different eras in a narrative that defies canon boundaries. Disclaimer: the content presented on this channel is intended solely for entertainment and speculative discussion. I do not claim ownership of any anime footage featured in this video. All rights and credits are respectfully attributed to their original creators and copyright holders. Let's begin. Naruko Uzumaki was born in the shadow of war, not just between villages, but within the very soul of the world itself. Her birth was a secret wrapped in tragedy. Her parents, Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, died the night she was born, sealing the nine tails into her tiny, crying body. But unlike the world most know, where she grew up alone and ostracized in the heart of Konoha, this Naruko's path split early. In this world, remnants of the Uzumaki clan, nomads who had survived the destruction of Uzushio-gakure, learned of Kushina's death and came for the child. Under cover of night, they took her away, vanishing with her into the ruins of their homeland. The village elders of Konoha chose to erase her existence to protect both the village and the girl from those who would exploit her. Naruko was raised among the salt-washed stones and crumbling temples of Uzushio. It was a lonely but spiritual upbringing. The remaining Uzumaki, once a proud people of seal masters and spirit weavers, poured all they had into her. She was their last hope, the bearer of their bloodline and the nine tails. They taught her ancient arts, Fuinjutsu, chakra control, and sensing, and raised her not to be a weapon, but a guardian of knowledge. Still, despite their care, Naruko often felt a gap in her soul. She asked about her parents, about the world beyond the shores, about the silver-haired man who sometimes appeared in her dreams. A man whose eyes were colder than frost, whose voice carried authority like thunder. She didn't know his name. She thought maybe he was a ghost. Tobirama Senju had long since passed into legend. Born into an era soaked in blood, his life was defined by war. The Senju were constantly at war with the Uchiha, and Tobirama, the younger brother of the idealistic Hashirama, carried the burden of surviving where others did not. He saw more death than joy. Where Hashirama dreamed of peace, Tobirama prepared for betrayal. It was he who laid the rigid foundation of Konoha, the academy, the police force, the bureaucracy, the Anbu. He believed that stability came from control, not idealism. As the second Hokage, Tobirama gave everything to the village, even his life. But death is never absolute in a world ruled by chakra and soul-sealing arts. When he fell in battle, Tobirama's body was lost to time, but fragments of his chakra remained tethered to a specific point, an old seal that had once been part of an unfinished jutsu, buried deep within the ruins of Uzushio-gakure. That's where she found it. Naruko was 16 when she stumbled upon the broken seal. A pulse of chakra called to her, ancient and cold. She touched it, and for a moment, time folded. She saw his eyes, no longer in a dream. She didn't know how, or why, but Tobirama Senju's soul responded to her chakra. Whether it was fate, or the will of the world yearning for balance, their lives intersected not in war, but in the stillness of ruin. They didn't meet in battle. They met in memory. She saw a ghost, he saw the descendant of a people he once respected. A girl with his brother's fire and his own sense of quiet sorrow. He wasn't fully alive, not at first. But with each visit, each conversation, each reckless pouring of her chakra into the old seal, Tobirama grew more real. The edge of his voice sharpened, his presence thickened. She brought him back, piece by piece, not through forbidden jutsu, but through sheer force of connection. At first, it was curiosity. Then understanding. Then something far deeper. Tobirama had never known gentleness in life, not truly. He was respected, feared, even admired, but not understood. He lived in the shadow of his brother's warmth and ideals, always the cold strategist, the enforcer of order. So when Naruko spoke to him, not as a legend, not as the second Hokage, but as a man, he didn't know what to do with it. She laughed in ways that reminded him of his brother but sharper, less innocent, forged by solitude. She argued with him, challenged him, called him out when his ideals clashed with human empathy. And yet, she listened. She wanted to understand. Her chakra sustained the connection, but it was their conversations that gave him shape. Naruko spent weeks in those ruins, away from the village that didn't even know she existed, pouring herself into uncovering the lost sealing array. Her curiosity became devotion. Tobirama's presence grew, flickering at first, then more stable, like chakra solidifying into form. He could touch things. Feel the air. One night, While rain hissed over broken stone, he stood before her completely. No longer a voice, no longer a shadow, reborn by the will of a girl who should have hated the world, but somehow didn't. Naruko didn't flinch. "You're real," she whispered. He only nodded. There was tension between them at first, philosophical and emotional. Tobirama couldn't understand how someone with a beast sealed inside her could speak of compassion without bitterness. He distrusted idealism, especially in someone so young. But Naruko wasn't naive. She had lost just as much as him. What set her apart was that she refused to let that loss make her cruel. Where he had turned cold to survive, she had stayed warm out of defiance. Time passed. She brought him books, shared food with him like it was normal, made jabs at his constant scowling. He lectured her, trained her in water release, corrected her seal work with surgical precision. There was something grounding in their interactions, something that slowly shifted from mutual fascination to something far more dangerous, for Tobirama especially. He began to look forward to her visits. He counted the days between them. It terrified him. Naruko was less subtle. She teased him, but underneath was something quiet and reverent. She looked at him the way people only ever looked at legends, but spoke to him like he was just a man. One evening, while fixing a broken seal with him, her hand brushed his. Neither of them moved for a long moment. Tobirama's breath hitched. She felt it. She didn't let go. Still, he resisted it. He had always believed attachment was a weakness, that it led to compromise, to mistakes. But Naruko had a way of unraveling those walls, not by force, but by existing. She made him want to be human again. One night, the air between them changed. The conversation had turned to life, what it meant to live after you were supposed to be dead, what it meant to be born with a burden. Tobirama told her he didn't regret dying if it meant protecting the village. She asked him, gently, what it felt like to want something for yourself, just once. "I wouldn't know," he said. She leaned in, resting her forehead against his. "Maybe you should find out." Their lips met like it was inevitable. And from that night forward, Tobirama stopped pretending he could live without her. They kept their world hidden. She would return to the Uzumaki for weeks at a time, training, enduring the demands of her clan. But always she came back. And Tobirama, no longer just a fragment of chakra, was anchored by her more than any seal could manage. They were two people born in the wrong eras, forged by tragedy, drawn together in the silent places the world had forgotten. When Naruko began to feel the changes in her body, her chakra becoming erratic, her senses heightened, she knew before she even took the test. Life had always been unpredictable, even cruel. But as she sat in the ruins of Uzushio, fingers trembling over the seal that once called a soul back from death, she whispered the truth to the man beside her. "Toby. I'm pregnant." He didn't speak immediately. His red eyes, usually sharp, calculating, were unreadable. Then, for the first time in either of their lives, Naruko saw something fragile in him. Not fear. Not regret. Just awe. And then, softly, "You brought me back to life. Now you're giving life." He took her hand. Neither of them looked away. Naruko had never been to a doctor before, not for something like this. Her life had always been entwined with chakra, with ancient seals and instinctive healing, not hospitals or gentle hands with stethoscopes. But this wasn't just chakra. This was a child. Their child. And for the first time in her life, she was afraid of not knowing. They made the journey at night, cloaked and cautious, to a small outpost village on the edge of the land of whirlpools, one of the few neutral zones where no one would recognize them, where names meant nothing and questions were rarely asked. Tobirama insisted on accompanying her. He had no legal identity, no documentation, and to the world, he was a man who shouldn't exist, but his presence beside her was steady, protective, and absolute. The clinic was small, run by an aging midwife who had once served the battlefield in the Third War. She didn't ask for details when Naruko hesitantly admitted she thought she might be pregnant. She simply nodded, her eyes flickering to Tobirama with quiet scrutiny. He didn't flinch. He stood there like a sentinel, watching every movement, memorizing every word the doctor said. When the results came back positive, Naruko didn't cry. She just stared down at her hands, the same ones that had held kunai and summoned clones and carved seals into stone, now trembling in a way they never had before. Tobirama didn't say anything at first. He simply sat beside her and reached for her hand, firm, warm, grounding. "I'm not afraid," she finally said. "Just new." "You should be," he answered. "This world doesn't make space for softness. But we'll carve it out ourselves." As the weeks passed, Naruko's body began to change. Her chakra fluctuated wildly at first, Kurama stirred often, confused and irritated by the new presence forming within her. But even the 9 tails eventually grew still, almost contemplative, as though even he could sense what this meant. The Uzumaki bloodline was strong, and the child inside her burned with potential. She felt nauseous most mornings, her stomach rejecting food she once devoured. Her balance shifted. Her emotions ran wild, anger flared easily, but so did joy. There were nights she curled up in the ruined temple beside Tobirama and wept into his chest, not because she was weak, but because the weight of becoming a mother without ever having been a daughter was too heavy some days. Tobirama, for his part, changed too. He wasn't soft by nature, but with her, he adapted. He studied everything: medical scrolls, chakra theory on pregnancy, herbal remedies for morning sickness. He'd wake before her to brew teas that calmed her stomach. When she snapped at him over something trivial, he never took it personally, he simply raised a brow, let her burn out, and then silently offered her a seat or a blanket or a piece of fruit. He began modifying seals for her safety, wards around the ruins, alarms that would trigger if anyone approached. He placed a chakra suppression field around the temple to mask her presence from sensors. His paranoia became her shield. One evening, when she was nearly 3 months along, she caught him sitting beside her, quietly pressing his ear against her stomach. She watched him, saying nothing. His face, so often unreadable, was etched with something close to reverence. "I never thought I'd be here," he said quietly. "You're not just here," she replied. "You're with me." He looked up at her, his red eyes reflecting the firelight. "And I'll never leave you again." From that point on, he became not just a guardian, but a partner. When she trained to keep her body strong, he supervised, never letting her overdo it. When she was too tired to walk, he carried her without a word. When nightmares woke her, he held her, whispering old Senju prayers not meant for gods, but for remembrance. Tobirama, the man who had once sacrificed everything for a village, now chose to live for a single heartbeat growing beneath Naruko's skin. And that heartbeat would soon become their world. The days passed slowly, like the changing of seasons, and Naruko began to notice how everything around her felt sharper, more alive. The wind that swept through the ruins carried a softness now. Her body, though heavier with each week, moved differently, not clumsier, but with care, like her instincts were tuning themselves to protect something precious. It wasn't just her anymore. One morning, around the start of her 4th month, she woke with a sharp pull in her lower back. Not dangerous, just uncomfortable. Tobirama was already up, practicing silent kata near the edge of the overgrown courtyard. His movements were still perfect, crisp, controlled, but they slowed the moment he heard her shift behind him. She sat up, holding her belly, and grunted. "Everything feels like it's shifting around in there." He crossed the courtyard in moments, kneeling beside her, already reaching for her wrist to check her pulse. She batted him off with a smirk. "I'm not dying. It's just weird. I can feel my body moving to make room for someone else." Tobirama studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Your hips are expanding. You're adapting." Naruko blinked. "Great. Say it like I'm a science experiment." He stood and offered her a hand. "Then maybe don't wake up groaning like an old man." She laughed, but she took his hand anyway. Later that day, Tobirama brought her a cushion he'd carved himself, worn but functional. It was meant to support her back when she sat meditating. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at the roughly smoothed wood and the folded cloth he'd sewn over it. He hadn't asked for praise. He just watched her use it with silent satisfaction. A few days later, while training at the stream near the edge of the forest, Naruko miscalculated a chakra control exercise and slipped. She would have caught herself easily, but the panic of protecting her stomach flared first. Her body twisted awkwardly midair. She didn't hit the ground. Tobirama was just there, one hand around her waist, the other pressed against her back. His jaw was tight. He didn't speak as he helped her to her feet, but his hands lingered, checking her for injury, making sure she was steady. "I'm fine," she muttered, a bit embarrassed. "You won't be if you don't start treating yourself like you matter." His tone wasn't harsh. It was shaken. That night, she found him in the temple with one of his old scrolls unraveled, sketching a new jutsu formula. It was designed to act as an internal barrier, a passive chakra shell that could shield her womb in emergencies. He looked up, surprised to see her. "You don't have to do all of this," she said softly. He didn't answer right away. His fingers hovered over the paper. "Yes, I do." Another time, in her 5th month, the baby kicked for the first time. It was just a flutter, more like a tremor than a kick, but she froze mid-sentence and pressed a hand to her belly with wide eyes. Tobirama, who had been calmly repairing a broken wall seal nearby, looked up at her. "It moved," she whispered. "It moved." He was beside her in seconds. She took his hand without thinking and guided it to her stomach, waiting. And then it happened again. Tobirama didn't smile, not in the usual way. But his eyes softened, and something in his shoulders eased, like he'd just confirmed something he hadn't dared believe. "That's your child," she said. "That's our child." He simply nodded, and stayed like that, his hand still resting on her, his other slipping quietly into hers. As the weeks passed, the ruins began to change. They cleaned more. Rearranged things. A quiet sense of nesting took over. Tobirama constructed shelves from salvaged wood, reinforced the roof, wove chakra into the walls to stabilize them against wind and rain. Naruko sewed blankets, badly at first, but she got better. Once, while organizing old scrolls, she stumbled across an ancient Uzumaki lullaby. She hummed it out loud without realizing. Tobirama paused mid-task, listening. Then, almost so faint she had to lean in to hear him, he said, "My mother used to sing something like that. Before the war started." She didn't press him. She just kept humming. And when she started over from the beginning, she felt him humming along beneath his breath. Nothing came quickly. There were no sudden leaps. Just days that bled into one another with small, steady moments, a carved spoon, a basin of warm water, the way he would rest his hand against her belly as they sat in silence after meals. Every touch, every breath, every word was slow. Because they both knew they had been born in chaos, raised by death, and shaped by war. But this? This was the first time either of them had ever lived for something small. Something new. And they weren't rushing. One night, the air turned colder than usual. The wind curled through the broken archways of the temple like a living thing, whispering through the grass and stone. Naruko was curled beneath a worn blanket, her hands resting protectively over the rise of her belly. She was 6.5 months along now. Sleep came and went in waves, too many dreams, too many sharp twinges in her back. The baby was active, especially at night, and tonight was no exception. She shifted with a soft grunt, trying not to wake him. But Tobirama was already sitting up. He always knew. Even in sleep, he sensed every shift in her chakra like the rhythm of a heartbeat. "Is it the pain again?" he asked quietly, his voice still low from sleep. Naruko nodded. "Just tight. Feels like there's a knot stretching under my ribs." Without a word, he moved behind her, pulling the blanket aside to rest his hands gently against her back. His chakra flowed slowly, carefully, the way he'd learned to channel it without overwhelming her. He used to be all sharp edges, precision and force, but with her, he'd become gentler, like water tracing the cracks in stone. His fingers worked in slow circles. She sighed. "You're too good at that." "It's just chakra manipulation," he said, but there was the faintest trace of warmth in his tone. "No, it's more than that. You care." There was a pause. "I always cared," he said at last. "I just never knew how to show it until you." Naruko leaned her head back against his shoulder, tired but smiling. The fire crackled nearby, casting golden light across the stone floor. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then, she asked quietly, "What do you think they'll look like?" He stilled for a moment. Strong chakra coils, without question. High affinity for water or wind. Maybe both. Possibly red hair, like your mother. Or silver. "Red hair and red eyes would be something," she murmured. "I wonder if they'll be loud, or quiet. Brave or clever." "They'll be themselves," Tobirama said. "And that will be enough." She closed her eyes. "I want them to be free. Not burdened like we were." "They won't be," he said firmly. "We'll make sure of that." Later, as she drifted into sleep in his arms, she whispered, "Toby?" "Yes? If I didn't have you, I think this would have broken me." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he tightened his arms around her, one hand resting on her stomach, fingers splayed over the life they'd made together. "You were never breakable," he murmured. "You just needed someone who wouldn't let you carry it alone." Another day, weeks later, brought a different kind of challenge. A storm had rolled in from the coast, fierce and relentless. Rain lashed the forest outside, and wind slammed against the reinforced seals Tobirama had painstakingly woven around the old structure. Naruko was restless, pacing in the limited space. Her center of gravity had changed completely. Her ankles ached. Her lower back throbbed. She was frustrated, and no amount of meditation or breathing helped. She snapped at Tobirama over nothing, something about the way he stacked firewood. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't argue. Instead, he walked to her, calmly took her face in both hands, and kissed her forehead. "You're allowed to be angry," he said. "You're allowed to be tired. I will never hold that against you." Her breath caught in her throat, and just like that, her anger collapsed into tears. He held her through all of it, silent, steady, solid. Later, he coaxed her to sit while he made stew from dried vegetables and wild herbs he'd foraged weeks ago. He ladled it carefully into a clay bowl and handed it to her without a word. She stared at him for a long moment. "You were born for war," she said softly. "But you're better at this." He met her gaze, calm and clear. "I never wanted war. I just didn't know another way to protect what mattered. Now he did." One afternoon, Naruko felt the baby shift with such force it made her cry out. Not in pain, but in surprise, in joy. She grabbed Tobirama's hand and pressed it to her belly. "There. Feel that?" He did. And this time, he laughed. Not a smirk. Not a breath through his nose. An actual, quiet, stunned laugh. It was brief, but it broke something open in the silence between them. Naruko stared at him, wide-eyed. "Did you just laugh?" He cleared his throat, looking off to the side. Momentary loss of control. She grinned, eyes gleaming. "Do it again." He didn't. But later, when he thought she was asleep, she heard him murmuring to her belly, his voice low and almost reverent. "You'll be strong. And safe. And you'll know what it means to be loved." The baby kicked in response. He smiled. Slowly, silently, and only for them. As the last weeks of spring slipped into early summer, the ruins of Uzushio began to bloom in subtle ways. Small flowers pushed through the cracked stones, vines crept up the forgotten walls, and the sea breeze warmed just enough to carry the scent of salt and life. Naruko's belly had grown full and round, her movements slower, but there was a peace in her now, a quiet sense of readiness. Tobirama remained close. Always within reach, always alert. She used to joke that he acted more like a bodyguard than a lover, but when her steps faltered or her breath shortened, he was always there. A hand at her elbow. A palm to her back. A glance that spoke louder than any words. He didn't hover, he adapted. Not overbearing, but present, steady, and unfailing. Then came the surprise she hadn't expected. It started with a familiar chakra flickering near the edge of the barrier Tobirama had set up, sharp and bright, like sunlight breaking through fog. "Yamato?" She blinked, sensing it again. It had been months since she'd seen any of the old Onbu or Leaf Shinobi she had crossed paths with during early recon missions. After she disappeared to keep the pregnancy secret, most assumed she'd gone off-grid entirely. But Yamato had always been one of the few who noticed things. That afternoon, as Naruko walked slowly with Tobirama through the lower garden path, a bright flash of chakra surged nearby, then another, and another. Tobirama's eyes narrowed. Not hostile. No killing intent. But they're close. And then the flash of pink. "Sakura." Naruko froze. "Oh my god." They came through the barrier with grins and suppressed laughter, Sakura, Ino, Hinata, even Tenten. Behind them was Yamato, arms crossed and smirking like he'd done something clever and knew it. They carried baskets. Streamers. A large box wrapped in cloth. Food containers balanced precariously on weapons racks. Someone had actually made a banner from an old mission scroll. It read "Congratulations, Naruko." In uneven red ink. Naruko stared at them, stunned. "You found me?" Sakura smirked. Yamato tracked the trees. "And let's be honest, you're not subtle when you leak chakra like a lantern." Hinata stepped forward shyly, her hands cupped protectively around a knitted bundle. "We wanted to see you. And the baby." Naruko blinked rapidly. "You guys. You planned a baby shower? Out here?" Ino raised an eyebrow. "You thought we'd let you have a legendary Uzumaki Senju baby and just go quietly into labor without so much as a party?" Tobirama, standing behind Naruko, folded his arms and looked vaguely horrified by the chaos spilling into his meticulously balanced sanctuary. Streamers were already being strung between two crumbled archways. Someone had summoned a music box. Sakura was laying out rice balls like it was a mission strategy. Hinata gave him a polite bow, he nodded in return, stiff but respectful. "And Naruko?" She laughed. She laughed, hand on her belly, eyes bright with tears. "This is ridiculous. This is insane. You guys are the best. The baby kicked, hard and happy, and she winced. Ino immediately rushed over. Ooh. Was that a kick? Can I feel? Tobirama stepped back as the girls swarmed around Naruko. He didn't stop them. But his gaze never left her. He watched her laugh, glow, tear up, and tease. For once, surrounded by noise and friendship and color, Naruko wasn't just surviving or preparing, she was living. During the celebration, they played absurd games, one involving ninja scrolls and blindfolds, another where Ino tried, and failed, to guess the baby's gender based on chakra signature. Sakura gifted medical herbs and prenatal scrolls. Hinata had knit the tiniest booties, soft and pale blue. Even Tenten had brought a weapon, a retractable kunai made safe for chakra training. For when they're old enough, she'd said with a wink. Naruko sat in the middle of it all, cradling her belly, overwhelmed but glowing. After sunset, when everyone had settled and the sky turned orange and soft, Sakura wandered over to Tobirama. The others were busy fussing over Naruko. You really care about her, she said, watching him. Tobirama nodded. More than anything. She's strong. But it's good she doesn't have to do this alone. I won't let her, he said simply. Sakura smiled. Good. Because she's finally happy. When the friends left just before nightfall, carried by Yamato's silent summons and a wave of hugs, Naruko stood at the edge of the ruins, watching them vanish into the trees. She wiped her face, still teary from laughter. That was, she said, trailing off. Tobirama stepped beside her. Unexpected. She looked up at him, still smiling. They reminded me of what I used to be. And now I know who I've become. And who's that? She turned to him and placed his hand over her belly again. Someone who gets to have all of this. And someone who wants it, with you. The baby shifted beneath his hand, slow and steady. For a moment, Tobirama didn't say anything. Then, voice deep and low, you saved my soul, Naruko. She leaned into him, and together, they watched the fireflies rise, glowing in the dusk like stars returning to earth. The weeks that followed the baby shower unfolded gently, like the slow unfurling of a leaf. Naruko felt lighter somehow, less like she was carrying the weight of the world, and more like she was carrying a promise. Tobirama was different too, softer around the edges, though his resolve remained ironclad. One afternoon, as they sat together near the small pond that had formed in the temple courtyard from recent rains, Naruko traced lazy circles on the surface with her fingers. The water shimmered, reflecting the late spring sunlight in flickering patterns. You know, she said quietly, I never thought I'd be here like this. Not with you. Not expecting a child. Tobirama watched her, his expression unreadable at first, then slowly opening like dawn breaking over the horizon. Neither did I, he admitted. But perhaps that is the way of things, chaos making space for something new. Naruko smiled, leaning against his shoulder. We're making a different kind of legacy. He nodded. One without the scars of war. The baby kicked suddenly, a firm reminder that life was already shaping their future. Naruko's eyes widened, and she laughed softly. Guess they're ready to join the conversation. Tobirama's gaze softened as he placed a hand over hers, over her belly. We will teach them everything. Strength, compassion, freedom. Her heart swelled with a fierce hope she hadn't dared to hold before. And in the quiet of that afternoon, surrounded by the slow, steady pulse of new life and old stones, Naruko and Tobirama let themselves believe. The future was waiting. And they would face it, together. As Naruko's belly grew fuller and rounder with each passing day, the life inside became more than a distant promise, it became a presence that filled their world in quiet, powerful ways. The baby was no longer just a shadow or a flutter, it was a heartbeat that echoed alongside Naruko's own, a force that shaped their days and nights. Sometimes, Tobirama would catch Naruko softly talking to her belly, murmuring promises and dreams she barely dared speak aloud. The baby responded with tiny kicks and shifts, each movement like a secret message from a future they both craved but couldn't yet touch. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in strokes of gold and purple, Naruko rested against Tobirama, her hand cupping the swell of new life beneath her shirt. The baby stirred, rolling and stretching inside her with surprising strength. Tobirama's hand joined hers, fingers splayed wide over her skin. Do you feel that? Naruko whispered. Tobirama nodded, eyes shining with a mixture of awe and tenderness. Stronger every day. They stayed like that for a long moment, two pairs of hands, one beating heart between them. The baby was growing fast. Naruko could feel its presence in everything, When she woke suddenly in the night, when a sharp jab of movement made her laugh despite the discomfort, or when the smallest touch from Tobirama sent it into a frenzy of kicks, as if recognizing the touch of its father's chakra. Sometimes Tobirama would close his eyes and concentrate, trying to sense the child's chakra signature, a blend of Uzumaki vitality and Senju resilience. It was faint but fierce, pulsing with potential. "They will be strong," he said softly one day, "and full of life." Naruko smiled, resting her head against his chest. "And they're already teaching me how to live differently." In every kick, every hiccup, every flutter, the baby was changing everything. Not just their bodies, but their hearts, their futures, the very way they saw the world. The child wasn't just a new life, it was a new beginning. As the months slowly turned into the final days, the air in the ruins felt thick with anticipation. Naruko's body had become a delicate balance of strength and vulnerability, every breath measured, every movement careful. Tobirama never left her side, his presence a constant shield against any fear or uncertainty. They had prepared quietly, with patience and care, but nothing could truly ready them for the moment when the baby would arrive. The labor began just as the first light of dawn spilled over the horizon. Naruko's breaths came in steady waves, pain rising and falling like the tide, and Tobirama stayed close, guiding her with gentle words and steady hands. There was no panic, only the profound silence of two people facing a new kind of battle. One fought not with jutsu or strategy, but with love and endurance. Hours passed, marked only by the soft rhythm of Naruko's breathing and the encouraging murmurs from Tobirama. When the moment came, the child entered the world with a fierce cry, a sharp, clear voice that echoed through the quiet temple ruins. The baby's eyes fluttered open, revealing a striking shade of deep crimson, a vivid reminder of the Uzumaki bloodline. Soft, fiery red hair crowned the tiny head, and a delicate swirl of chakra pulsed faintly beneath the skin. Naruko smiled weakly, exhaustion and awe mingling as she reached out to touch their child for the first time. Tobirama's fingers trembled slightly as he carefully cradled the newborn, his heart swelling with a love he hadn't known was possible. "She's a girl," Naruko whispered, voice thick with emotion. Tobirama nodded, eyes bright. "Strong. And fierce. Just like her mother." Together, they chose a name that honored both their legacies and the hope they held for the future. "Akari," Naruko said softly. "It means light. Because she's the light we fought for." Tobirama smiled, resting his forehead gently against his daughter's. "Our light," he agreed. In that quiet moment, surrounded by ancient stones and the soft hum of new life, the future felt wide open, full of promise, and bright with the glow of Akari's first breath. Akari's arrival brought a fragile but powerful new rhythm to Naruko and Tobirama's lives. Her cries filled the once silent ruins with sound, her tiny hands grasped at the air with surprising strength, and her bright red hair was like a flame flickering against the dim stone walls. Every breath she took seemed to pulse with the combined legacy of Uzumaki vitality and Senju resilience. But as the days passed, something unexpected began to emerge. Akari's chakra was unlike anything either of them had seen, wild and untamed, surging in unpredictable waves that sometimes overwhelmed Naruko, causing sudden fatigue or dizziness. Tobirama spent long nights studying ancient scrolls, desperate to understand what their daughter's unique energy meant. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast long shadows across the temple, Akari's cries turned frantic and sharp. Naruko rushed to her side, feeling the child's chakra spike erratically beneath her touch. Tobirama arrived quickly, placing his hands gently on Akari's tiny chest, trying to calm the chaotic flow. Suddenly, the air around them shimmered, and a faint voice echoed in their minds, a voice neither of them recognized, but filled with power and ancient wisdom. "She carries not just our blood, but the key to balance. The future of the shinobi world rests within her." Naruko and Tobirama exchanged shocked glances. Was this a message? A warning? Or something more? From that moment, everything changed. Akari's powers grew rapidly, sometimes too fast, too strong. Tobirama realized she wasn't just their child, she was a force that could reshape the fate of their clans and the entire shinobi world. Protecting her would mean navigating dangers far beyond anything they had imagined. But in the midst of uncertainty, one truth remained clear: Akari was their light, their hope. And they would face whatever came, together. As days turned into months, Naruko and Tobirama found themselves adapting not only to the demands of parenthood but also to the delicate balance of nurturing their relationship amidst the whirlwind of Akari's growing powers. The tiny flame they'd brought into the world was fierce and unpredictable, but it also deepened the bond between them in ways neither had anticipated. They learned to read each other's silences and small gestures, how Naruko's hand would tense when Akari's chakra flared, or how Tobirama's gaze softened whenever he watched Naruko cradle their daughter. The once stony walls of the ruined temple began to feel less like a fortress and more like a home, warmed by laughter and quiet moments shared between two people rediscovering what it meant to trust and lean on one another. Despite the chaos, they made space for themselves, carving out moments of peace and normalcy. One spring, as cherry blossoms burst into bloom, Tobirama surprised Naruko with a simple picnic beneath the trees. They sat side by side on a woven blanket, Akari asleep between them, her tiny chest rising and falling in the soft breeze. Naruko laughed softly as Tobirama clumsily attempted to feed her, the usually stoic elder brother showing an unexpectedly gentle side. "You're terrible at this," she teased, swatting his hand away. He smirked, undeterred. "Someone has to keep you from eating everything." That day, they walked through a nearby village, marveling at the simple beauty of life beyond the ruins, children playing in the streets, vendors calling out their wares, elders sharing stories in quiet courtyards. For the first time in what felt like forever, they allowed themselves to be ordinary. Winter brought its own kind of magic. Wrapped in thick cloaks, they carried Akari through soft, falling snow to a small hot spring nestled among pine trees. Steam rose in curling tendrils as Tobirama gently placed their daughter in a shallow basket near the water's edge, keeping her warm and safe while he and Naruko soaked away the biting cold. In those moments, with the world hushed and white around them, their laughter echoed freely, two souls healing together, strengthened by the fragile, fierce light of their daughter. Through every trial and every quiet joy, Naruko and Tobirama grew not just as parents, but as partners, finding strength in each other, and hope in the life they were building, one day at a time. As Akari grew, so did the quiet rhythms of their lives. Each day brought new challenges, but also new joys, her first tentative steps, the way she giggled when Tobirama's stern expression cracked into a rare smile, the way Naruko's eyes softened every time Akari reached for her hand. The baby who had once been a mysterious force now felt like the very heart of their family. Tobirama found himself teaching Akari about water techniques, gentle currents and calm flows, carefully controlled to match her small frame. Naruko showed her how to harness the swirling chakra of the Uzumaki lineage, turning it into bursts of bright energy, playful and wild. Together, they watched their daughter discover the delicate dance of power and control, her spirit fierce but tempered by love. One spring evening, under a sky painted with stars, Naruko and Tobirama sat outside their small home, Akari asleep between them. Tobirama's hand found Naruko's, their fingers intertwining naturally. "We've come far," Naruko said softly, leaning her head on his shoulder. Tobirama nodded. "And yet, this is only the beginning." She smiled, eyes reflecting the flickering light of a nearby lantern. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." He kissed her temple gently. "Always." Their daughter stirred, a small smile curling on her lips even in sleep, a promise of the future they would build, filled with hope, strength, and the unbreakable bond of family. Naruko and Tobirama quickly realized that raising Akari required more than just love, it demanded teamwork, patience, and a willingness to adapt. They divided their duties in a way that balanced their strengths and eased the strain of caring for a child with such unique and powerful chakra. Naruko took charge of nurturing and emotional connection. She spent hours holding Akari close, speaking softly to soothe her when her energy flared or when she cried. She taught Akari early on how to calm her chakra through breathing and gentle movements, drawing on her own experiences to guide their daughter's wild spirit. Naruko also handled most of the nighttime care, waking to feed and comfort Akari during the long, quiet hours when doubt and exhaustion threatened to take hold. Tobirama, with his methodical mind and mastery over water and sealing techniques, focused on the practical and protective side. He developed specialized chakra barriers around their home to keep Akari safe, especially during episodes when her power surged unexpectedly. He crafted training exercises tailored to her growing abilities, teaching control and discipline with a quiet, steady hand. Tobirama also managed the day-to-day logistics, preparing herbal remedies, gathering nutritious food, and ensuring their home remained a sanctuary amid the challenges. They communicated constantly, sharing insights and worries. When Naruko felt overwhelmed by Akari's unpredictable bursts of energy, Tobirama stepped in with calm reassurance. When Tobirama worried about pushing their daughter too hard, Naruko reminded him to listen to her needs. Together, they learned to read Akari's cues, adjusting their roles fluidly as their daughter's needs evolved. In the quiet moments, they would steal glances across the room, Naruko soothing a restless Akari, Tobirama patiently guiding her tiny hands through chakra control exercises, and find strength in knowing they were building more than just a family. They were creating a foundation of love, trust, and balance that would carry all three of them into whatever future awaited. As Akari grew from a fragile infant into a curious toddler, the dance of their shared responsibilities became even more vital. Naruko and Tobirama fell into a rhythm that, while sometimes exhausting, was full of small victories and deepening love. Naruko's natural warmth made her the go-to for bedtime stories and comfort during nightmares, moments when Akari's chakra would spike in restless dreams. She wove ancient Uzumaki lullabies, humming melodies that seemed to calm the child's restless energy and lull her back to sleep. Her patience was endless, even during those nights when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. Tobirama, meanwhile, spent mornings teaching Akari control through simple water manipulation exercises. He would conjure small streams and droplets, guiding her tiny hands to shape and steady the flow. Watching her giggle as she accidentally splashed him was a rare break from his usual stern demeanor, a reminder that even the most disciplined could find joy in the little things. When Akari's energy surged beyond their control, they worked as a team. Naruko would soothe and ground her with soft words and gentle touches, while Tobirama would reinforce the protective barriers and carefully adjust his chakra to stabilize the environment. Their combined efforts created a sanctuary where Akari could learn to harness her power without fear. Outside their home, friends and allies began to notice the family's quiet strength. Sakura often stopped by with herbs and advice, while Yamato offered gentle training tips. Even Hinata would come to sit with Naruko, sharing stories of raising her own children, reminding them they were not alone in this journey. Through every trial, every sleepless night and every laugh-filled afternoon, Naruko and Tobirama grew, not just as parents, but as partners bound by the shared miracle of Akari. Their love, once forged in the fires of war and duty, now burned steady and warm, a light to guide their daughter, and each other, into whatever the future might hold. As Akari grew stronger and more curious, a new twist emerged, one that neither Naruko nor Tobirama had anticipated. During a training session by the river, Akari suddenly stopped, her small hands trembling as she tried to control a stream of water. Instead of the usual flowing pattern, the water twisted into a strange shape, a delicate spiral that shimmered with both Uzumaki and Senju chakra. Tobirama's eyes widened. That's not something I taught her. Naruko knelt beside Akari, feeling a strange warmth ripple through her daughter's chakra. It's like she's combining our powers in a way no one else can. But then, as the water spiral hovered between them, it burst into a flash of light, and Akari vanished. Naruko screamed, reaching out, but Tobirama caught her by the wrist. Calm. She's not gone. This is chakra-based teleportation. Or something close to it. Moments later, Akari reappeared a few feet away, laughing as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Naruko looked at Tobirama, fear and wonder mingling in her eyes. Our daughter, she's beyond anything we imagined. This new power wasn't just a gift, it was a sign that Akari's destiny was intertwined with forces far greater than their quiet family life. Protecting her would mean confronting mysteries and dangers that stretched beyond their world, challenging everything they thought they knew about chakra, legacy, and the future itself. The sudden display of Akari's teleportation-like ability sent shockwaves through Naruko and Tobirama's carefully balanced world. They had expected challenges, after all, she carried the blood of two powerful clans, but this was something entirely new, something that neither ancient scrolls nor modern teachings had prepared them for. Tobirama spent long nights studying forgotten texts and experimenting with seals and chakra flow, trying to understand the origins and limits of Akari's powers. Naruko, meanwhile, focused on grounding their daughter emotionally, helping her stay connected to the family and the simple joys of childhood, so that the overwhelming surge of abilities wouldn't isolate her. But it wasn't long before the outside world took notice. Rumors spread of a child who could appear and disappear like a shadow, who wielded chakra with uncanny precision. Some viewed her as a blessing, a symbol of hope, others whispered fears of a power too wild to control. One evening, as the family sat together under the stars, a messenger arrived, a shinobi from the Hidden Leaf, bearing a sealed scroll. Inside was a summons from the Hokage himself. Akari's abilities, it seemed, had attracted the attention of the highest powers in the village. They wanted to meet her, to understand what she was, and what she might become. Naruko and Tobirama exchanged a heavy look. Their peaceful life was about to change forever. But as they prepared to step back into the world they had long tried to leave behind, they knew one thing for certain: whatever awaited them, they would face it united, as a family, bound by love, legacy, and the fierce light of Akari's extraordinary destiny. The day they journeyed to the Hidden Leaf village was filled with a mix of anticipation and tension. Naruko cradled Akari close, feeling the subtle pulses of her daughter's chakra beneath her fingertips, while Tobirama walked with a protective but steady gait beside them. The village had changed since their last time here, new faces, new buildings, but the same undercurrent of watchful eyes and unspoken expectations. At the Hokage's office, they were greeted with respectful nods but cautious curiosity. The current Hokage, wise and seasoned, listened intently as Tobirama explained Akari's unique abilities, the fusion of Uzumaki vitality and Senju strength, and now this mysterious teleportation technique that defied conventional understanding. The Hokage's gaze shifted to Akari, who, despite her young age, seemed to understand the weight of the moment. Her bright eyes flickered with curiosity and a hint of mischief, as if aware of the destiny others saw in her. "We must prepare her," the Hokage said gravely. "Not just to control her powers, but to protect her from those who would seek to use them." Naruko and Tobirama exchanged a determined glance. They had already faced darkness and loss, but now their fight was for Akari's future, a future that could change the very fabric of the shinobi world. Training under the watchful guidance of the village's finest, Akari began to learn discipline and control, her lessons carefully balanced with the freedom to explore her own path. Tobirama took pride in watching her grow, not just in strength, but in spirit. Naruko remained her unwavering anchor, nurturing the child's heart even as her powers soared. Yet, beneath the surface, a shadow loomed. Whispers of Akari's abilities had reached ears far beyond the hidden leaf, stirring old rivalries and new threats. Their family's journey was no longer just about love and legacy, it was about survival, trust, and the hope that the light Akari carried would shine bright enough to guide them through the coming storm. Years slipped by like flowing water, and Akari grew into a formidable young kunoichi, her unique blend of Uzumaki and Senju chakra making her abilities both rare and extraordinary. The wild, untamed power she once struggled to control had blossomed into precise, awe-inspiring techniques, her teleportation skill refined into seamless movements that left even seasoned shinobi astonished. Naruko and Tobirama watched with pride as their daughter carved her own path. The quiet family moments remained sacred, shared meals, laughter beneath blooming trees, the warmth of evenings spent in each other's company, but the world beyond their home was never far. Akari trained tirelessly, aware of the expectations resting on her small shoulders, yet determined to define herself beyond the legends of her lineage. Tobirama's teachings deepened, blending water-style mastery with innovative sealing techniques, while Naruko imparted the fiery resilience and spirit of the Uzumaki. Together, they prepared her not just for battles of strength, but for the complexities of leadership, compassion, and choice. Though the shadows of old threats lingered, Akari's presence brought hope, a beacon that reminded the shinobi world that strength could come with kindness, and legacy with freedom. As the sun set over the village one quiet evening, Naruko and Tobirama stood side by side, watching Akari train beneath the fading light. Tobirama's hand found Naruko's, their fingers entwining. "She's everything we dreamed, and more," Naruko whispered. Tobirama nodded, a rare softness in his eyes. "The future is hers to shape. And I believe she will shine brighter than any of us." Together, they faced forward, ready for whatever lay ahead, united by love, legacy, and the unbreakable bond of family. As the years passed, Akari's journey became the heart of their story, a testament to resilience, love, and the power of choice. Through every challenge, every battle, and every moment of doubt, Naruko and Tobirama stood unwavering by her side, not as legends or heroes, but as parents who believed in the light their daughter carried within. One evening, after a long day of training under the golden glow of sunset, Akari returned home, her steps lighter, her eyes bright with quiet confidence. She found Naruko and Tobirama waiting for her by the small garden they had nurtured together, a place where blossoms bloomed against all odds. Naruko smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair from Akari's face. "You've grown so much, little one." Tobirama placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Stronger than we ever imagined." Akari looked between them, her heart full. "I carry your strength, your hope. But more than that, I carry the choice to be who I want to be." Naruko's eyes glistened. "And that choice is the greatest power of all." In the soft hush of the evening, surrounded by the gentle fragrance of flowers and the warmth of family, they knew the truth of their journey. Legacy is not only in the blood we carry, but in the love we give and the freedom we grant to those who follow. And as Akari took her first steps toward her own future, the light she carried was no longer just theirs, it was a beacon for the world. A reminder that even in the darkest times, hope endures, love guides, and new beginnings are always possible. Dear YouTube family, that's all for today. If you enjoyed the content, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for your support. Warm regards. Six Path Weeb.